Sikh of the Rebbe, a beautiful, not a, it's a very nice, beautiful class, this class, but it's really, the class is really more on the Rashi, on the way to look at the Rashi. So I hope you guys are getting excited on Rashi. That's really the whole purpose of this thing, to get excited on Rashi. To get excited when you open a Chumash, to also learn the Rashi on the Chumash, not to just open the Chumash. Every Chumash that you get today, you buy today, you get it with Rashi, and today you get it in English from Rashi. So when you open up a Chumash, you always learn the Rashi, and you should always do that. And maybe now ask the question what Rashi wants to say, and what Rashi wants to impart on you. Rashi was a sage. We just did also decoding the Talmud. Rashi was a sage that in the 11th century that wrote a interpretation on the entire Chumash, on the entire Tanakh, on the entire Gemara, on the entire Mishnah and Gemara. This was one of the greatest sages of in history. Rashi, Shlomo Yitzchaki, and lived in France. Is buried there, and you can go visit the shul, Rashi shul, in France today. And it's, as I said last night, it's smaller than this shul, right over here, smaller than this building, this part of this shul, daily shul. It's not something as big as this shul. That's the whole Rashi shul. But this was a great teacher of the Jewish nation. Rabbam Shel Yisrael, he was given the title of the teacher of the Jewish nation, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was given the title Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses, our teacher. Rashi was also given that title, the teacher of the Jewish nation, because he simply gave the capability for every Jew to understand the Chumash better, to understand the Mishnah better, to understand the Gemara better, etc., etc., etc. Page 139, we start off with the Rashi's rules. We've gotten many of these rules we have said already. Rashi's interpretation is basic, is uncomplicated. If an interpretation is complex and it's complicated, even if it's valid, it's not Rashi's approach. Rashi just comes to explain, as Rashi said himself, I come to explain simple meaning of the verse. Number two, Rashi expects his explanation to be understood directly from his own words. Rashi doesn't expect you to go and find another book or another interpretation to understand what he's saying. Rashi expects you, when you read his interpretation, you got the entire picture, without relying on additional ideas or commentary unnecessarily clearly hinted at within the text. And that's the way it is. Rashi talks to a 5-year-old child, as he says. Number three, Rashi's words are concise and precise. He doesn't expect students to consult other books, but does expect them to clearly read every word. Often, rereading reveals the solution. And this is going to be the beauty of this Sikha, the Rashi, that we're going to say. We're going to learn a Rashi. There's not too many Rashis in this week's Parsha. Majority of the Parsha has no Rashi. So there are some Rashis, and we're going to learn a Rashi in this week's Parsha, and you'll see the wording, how the Rebbe takes every word of this Rashi. Okay, you ready? Who? Why?
He expects you shouldn't look at somebody else's.
Yeah, he's supposed to talk to a 5-year-old. You don't need the 5-year-old does not need to go and start other to go complex. Every pasuk can be interpreted in many different ways, but to a 5-year-old child, he doesn't interested in hearing a speech. That there are many different ways. He was interested in understanding the simple verse. And that's what Rashi came. Rashi actually is very humble. He said, I wrote a Pirush on the whole Torah, on the whole Chumash for a 5-year-old child. Nobody ever wrote a Pirush for a 5-year-old child. It's not heard of such a thing. So Rashi wrote an interpretation for a 5-year-old child. That a 5-year-old child that opens the Chumash can see what the Chumash means to a 5-year-old child. Self-understood, as we learned throughout the year, that 5-year-old child was pretty intense. But nevertheless, Rashi says that he's learning it to a 5-year-old child. So actually, it's humility of Rashi. Rashi could have given deep interpretations and complex interpretations. Others did many interpretations in the Chumash, and some are very complex, some are very deep, some are very Kabbalistic. Rashi says, that's not my job. You want to go and learn and go complex, gesund hate. My job is to teach a 5-year-old child, and I believe most of us are like this 5-year-old child that opens up a Chumash and wants to understand the simple meaning of the verse.
Is there a reason why the Torah wasn't written that way to begin with?
What?
Is there a reason why the Torah wasn't?
Because the Torah is both. Because the truth is, the Torah is an open-ended book. It's never ending. The Torah is both simple and complex. If you learn the Gemara, you'll see how the Torah is very complex. Every letter and every word is translated, and great many laws are learned out of every single nuance in the Torah. It's very complex if you learn the Talmud. But at the same moment, the Talmud always says, Ein mitzvah yotim lepshutai. The verse always has its simple meaning. So as we learn that the Torah is like a pardes, is like an orchard. Pardes means it's pshat. When you look at every verse, there's a simple meaning. There's the remez. There's what we learn from the verse, not the simple meaning, what it alludes to. There's the drush. There's the homiletic teaching of it, and there's the side. There's the esoteric. So it's a lot. There's a lot in this verse. There's a lot in every verse you learn. Not only every verse, in every word you read in the Torah, there's a lot. The Gemara says Rabbi Akiva not only learned law from the word, he learned even certain words have a crown upon the letter. And there's a reason why there's a crown upon that letter. And Rabbi Akiva would expound upon the crowns of the letters. Okay? So the Torah is at the same moment as simple as complex. So it has both worlds in it. The verse has a simple and has a complex meaning. You'll see sometimes Rashi says the word, I don't know the simple meaning of this verse. Any idea. I cannot tell you the simple meaning of the verse. I just don't comprehend it.
It shouldn't be simple for everybody to understand, and so that you don't need a Rashi.
No, you always need a teacher. Yes, you always should have a teacher. Always learn. Learning is I learn from a teacher. No, God is infinite. I need to have a finite teacher, a human being that comprehends like me, to be my teacher. And that's the beauty of learning in general. We should never learn ourselves, the Mishnah says. Always learn with somebody else. A chavruta. Always learn with somebody. Why? Because you might be saying things that you know what you're talking about. So you're just pontificating. Maybe the other person will say, hello. As they say in Yiddish, haknish kenchainik, you stop talking stupidity. So you always need to learn with somebody else. And you should always learn with a teacher. That would be the better. But surely with somebody else. Never learn by yourself, because you can come to erroneous conclusions. You always need to bounce off something with somebody else. And anything. You should always have somebody to bounce it off somebody. Not a God only. A human being to bounce it off another person. No, Nashi, I'm not saying.
They debating, there are other sages.
Yeah. I'm not saying Nashi is the ultimate word. Again, you open up a book, you'll see 1,000 commentaries on a verse. You should continue your knowledge. It's never ending. On every verse, you can continue your knowledge from the Gemara to the Mefarshim, the commentators on the Gemara. It's never ending. Look at this library. It's not even a tenth of a Jewish library. So learning never ends, and you should always continue to learn, and you should learn from others. That's it. You always should learn from others. There's no kind of concept that you and even in the Torah it says, God says to Moses to tell it to the Jewish people. You have to bounce it off another person. I'm going to tell you a command, but you need to bounce it off somebody else. Let's see what the person says. You need to bounce it. I don't know. We'll wait to that, and then we'll find out what happens.
Do we still have to?
Sure, 100%. Because learning never ends. God's wisdom is unlimited.
But I thought everything would become apparent when we share.
Yeah, so there'll be a greater, deeper concept in spirituality. Is never ending. So it's never ending. It's never ending. God, if you believe that the Torah was written by God, then the wisdom of God is never ending. Even after Mashiach comes, it's never ending. It's never ending. This wisdom is never ending. It actually goes deeper. It's a never deeper ending. It's never deeper. God's infinite. So how can a human being, even after Mashiach comes, to say that he has captured the wisdom of God? It's not possible. It's impossible. So trust me, it's never ending. It's never ending. That should be our big problem. Okay, but right now Mashiach is not here, so let's go into the basics. Okay. Again, you should know in the Talmud, if you learn Talmud, you'll see a rabbi never said anything on his own. He always based it on his teacher.
It's on the future.
On his teacher.
of teacher.
Always based his statement on a teacher. Amar Rabish in the name of Rav Ashi. Always based it on his teacher. Now maybe the teacher never said what he said totally, but he based it on his teacher. He expounded his teacher. He broadened the teaching of his teacher, but it was always based on his teacher. And that's the beauty. We should always base something on a teacher. That's why the Gemara always bases it on a verse. Right? It'll always go back to the verse. That's the eternal teacher, so to say, the verse. Okay. So we are right now in Vayakel. Vayakel is a continuation. There's 4 portions to this building of this Mishkan, right? Truma, Tetzava, Kisisa, 5 portions. Truma, Tetzava, Kisisa, Vayakel, Pekudei. 5 portions, mainly 4, but 5th in between over there, story with the golden calf. But 4 portions basically given to the 4 in the middle, also the 5th one, part of it, the beginning, is all given away to the dedication of this Mishkan, the building of this tabernacle that was in the desert. This tabernacle, right? V'asli Migdash shall make for me a tabernacle. So Truma Tetzava, the first 2, is the way God is the architect. He's telling us how to build it and what to build and what the dimensions. And then Vayakel comes to the actual building. B'Tzalel. So that we have like the architect, and now we have the builder. B'Tzalel is building it. Whatever. And we have the builder. Right now we're going into the building of the Mishkan. Then the next week's Pekudei is the accounting. The accounting. We go through the accounting. Moshe Rabbeinu accounts everything that was put into this Mishkan. Okay? So we give away 4 portions, like it's unbelievable if you think about it. We give away 4 portions to this Mishkan, this building of this Mishkan. And there's many commentaries to that. Why would he give away so much portions to this building of this Mishkan? Like the creation of the world, we give 31 verses for the, we're still trying to figure out the creation of the world, but the building of this Mishkan, we give away hundreds of verses and 4 portions, 4 weeks. We're living with this story. It's interesting. That's besides the point. Let's go to I'm only going to do the first 2 verses, okay, on page 140. I'm going to do the first 2 verses because the Rashi is on the 2nd verse, okay? So I don't know why they put in this book, Aganza Megillah. Okay, we're going to the first 2 verses of this week's portion. So it's verse number 1. Vayakel Moshe, and Moshe gathered in. Moshe called in the whole community of the children of Israel. He assembled them, right? And he said to them, these are the things that God has commanded. Verse number 2. 6 days you shall do your work. But on the 7th day, the 7th day shall be holy. Right? Show to God, Shabbos and Hashem. It's a Shabbos of Shabbos to God. Whoever does work on the 7 days, shall not live. That's the 2nd verse. Okay? How do we put Shabbos? That's the Ten Commandments. I mean, why do we throw in Shabbos in the picture, right? So there's a Rashi. This is the Rashi. Text number 2 is the Rashi on that we're going to talk about. 6 days. Rashi takes the word 6 days, and he says as follows. He first mentioned to them the ordination of Shabbos before commanding them about the work of the Mishkan, saying in effect that the Mishkan does not override the Shabbos. That's the Rashi. The Hikdam Lahem, I want to say the Hebrew because it's going to come back to us. Hikdam Lahem, he first mentioned to them the prohibition of Shabbos that before the making of the Mishkan, because you shouldn't think that the building of the Mishkan overrides the Shabbos. So when they built this Mishkan, and we know, as we'll soon see, when they started to build it, and they wanted to build it very quickly, so you would think that they would work every day, 2 to 7 days a week. They stopped the work of the building of this beautiful tabernacle on Shabbos. That's the Rashi. Okay? Anybody have a problem with this Rashi? Anybody bothered with this Rashi? That's the pasuk. That's the pasuk. That's not the Rashi. That's the pasuk. Yeah, that's the Ten Commandments. That question you should have asked in the portion of Yisro. That's in the Ten Commandments. It has nothing to do with this week's portion. That's a question. So the question is, you're not going to know the question. The question really, you have to know the second. You have to know the second text, the third text.
Punishment for the violation is pretty harsh.
No, that's not the Rashi. Rashi doesn't talk about the punishment. That's a different subject. I'm talking about this Rashi. Okay, that's not the. If you have any problems with that issue, you go to God. That's not talk to him about it, and that's it. But that has nothing to do with this Rashi. Okay, that's not the point of this class. This is not the first time that this is mentioned with not only in the Ten Commandments. Not only in the Ten Commandments. This is mentioned in last week's portion. When God commanded the Jews to build the Mishkan. It says, look in text number 3a. It says the same thing. And God said to Moshe, and you shall speak to the children of Israel. Only keep my Shabbos, for it's a sign between me and your generations to know that I, God, make you holy. Therefore, keep the Shabbos, for this is not the Ten Commandments. This is in last week's portion with the Mishkan. Same thing. Those who desecrate shall be put to death. Whoever performs work on it, the soul will be cut off from the midst of his people. 6 days a week you should be done. On the 7th day is Shabbos, of complete rest, a holy day to God. Shabbos shall be put. That's. And there's a Rashi. The Rashi says in that verse 3b, Rashi says almost the same thing. Only keep my Shabbos. You must still keep my Shabbos, though you may be preoccupied in the rush to work with the Mishkan. Nevertheless, Shabbos should not be set aside on that account. This is indicating the fact that every time in Hebrew the word ach or rak, but or only appears, they serve the function of limiting or excluding. In our case, only excludes the day of Shabbos from the instruction of the work of the Mishkan. So we already have in Parsha, in the previous portion, where the Torah talks again about, God talks about building the Mishkan. We have already told that you're not allowed to work on the Shabbos. Right? It's already been said. We know that already. It's nothing new. It's old. It's an old story. What's the difference between the previous portion and this portion.
Rabbi, here it mentions the Mishkan, all the items of the Mishkan directly after that. They're links. They're not linked last week.
Okay.
In other words, it spells it out specifically, just as maybe as a reminder. Isn't sometimes they repeat things for emphasis?
Okay.
So here
We're here. You're talking about Vayakev
yeah,
in our portion.
in our portion, it directly mentions all the items.
All the items, right.
So it's more concrete, it's more real, it's more evident, it's directly linked is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Last week, it's a little more,
Okay. Anybody else see the difference between the last week's portion and this week's portion? Between God's command, really better say between God's command and Moshe Rabbeinu's command. What's the difference in God's command and Moshe Rabbeinu?
Versus Shabbos's. Before the Shabbos's.
The quality of the commander.
God commands first the building of the Mishkan and then keep the Shabbos. Moshe Rabbeinu flips it. That's the general question that not only Dasha doesn't even mention that question, but that's a general question that's asked. Why does Moshe Rabbeinu flip it? If Moshe Rabbeinu is there to tell you God's command, God first commanded the Jews to build a Mishkan and then commanded them to keep the Shabbos. But Moshe Rabbeinu flips it in this week's portion. He puts first the Shabbos and then he goes to the building of the Mishkan.
No kidding.
So that is, wait a second, that is the general question. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu flip God's command?
It's almost amazing, Rabbi, because I mean, who would dare to flip God's command? And Moshe did it?
He flipped it. He flipped it. He flipped it. And that's the general question, text number 4. That's your general question. Why did Moshe change the order? God instructed him about the Asur Mishkan first, and then he stated the Shabbos. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu flip it?
maybe because the people were so enthusiastic. Mishkan, he had to tell them, listen, guys, you know, the
Very
Shabbos
good.
comes first.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Very good. Very good. That's going to be part of that situation. That's true. But that's a thundering question. If you read the two things, that's everybody asks. This is a famous question. Now Moshe Rabbeinu changes the order. Moshe Rabbeinu, who is there to tell the Jews what God wants, he suddenly seems, and everybody learned the previous Parsha, but we know where God said, build the Mishkan, and then he comes in Kisisa and says, you have to keep the Shabbos. And Rashi over there says that the same reason. So really, the question is, we know that your answer is not totally great, because you know that already, Rashi already answered that question. That there's really not a concept of an order per se, because the Torah already forewarned the Jews that you might think to break the Shabbos, because you want to build a Mishkan. So why did the Moshe Rabbeinu have to come in this week's portion and flip it? First of all, why did they tell it him? Why did God have to tell? What is the meaning of this verse? We know that already. That's number one. We know it from the previous portion. And number two is, even if Moshe Rabbeinu wants to forewarn the Jews, why does he flip it?
You have to tell somebody, we can't do this first before the action. I mean, that kind of makes sense.
What?
Like, in other words.
But God didn't do it that way. God said, that's the question.
But you're dealing with people. People have to talk to them.
Very good. I like you. Yeah. Okay.
In terms of how they relate.
Okay. Very
Don't
good.
do this because.
Very good. That's why, actually, it's very good what you're saying right now, because the Rebbe is going to emphasize the word. Actually, give my whole class away, but okay. The Rebbe is going to emphasize the word, the two letters that Rashi says that are not really needed. Hikdim lahem. The Rebbe bases the whole thing on these two words, hikdim lahem. higdim lahem. That Moshe Rabbeinu, this was not just a repeat of God's command. And the question is, why? Why did Moshe Rabbeinu need the higdim lahem? Why did the Jews have such a passion for this building? That's really the question. Why did the Jews have such a passion for this building than anything else that the Torah seemingly talks about? The Jewish people had an unbelievable passion for this building. Why were the Jews so passionate? There was a building campaign. Why were the Jewish people not so passionate about building campaigns? Why is every Jew so passionate about this building?
Because it says, I will dwell within them, so they would have Hashem's presence in their midst.
The Avish couldn't have their presence in the midst in another way. No, you'll see. It's a beautiful, it's a nice thing. It's not a very deep concept. As you see, you're getting it on your own. You see, you guys, I'm telling you, after a couple of learning with Rashi, you're already getting the way to look at the Torah. Yeah. He higdil lahem. How's he translate it? He actually puts those words. He first mentioned higdam lahem. He first mentioned. See, Rashi in those two words wants to tell you what was so important. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu jump the gun? Why did he jump the situation? Why did he go more than he was told to do? He was told to do A, he did B. He was told to tell the Jews about the building of the Mishkan, and self-understood, God told him, tell them about the Shabbos. We're not arguing with that, as Rashi said in Kisisa. God needed to tell the Jews about the Shabbos because the Jews were excited to build this Mishkan. But Moshe Rabbeinu felt the Jews were more excited than God thought he was, right? Moshe Rabbeinu felt that the Jewish people are gonna, as it should see, not that they're gonna intentionally want to break the Shabbos. They're gonna be so excited about doing it, they won't even know that it's Shabbos, right? They'll be so enthusiastic that they will do it without even knowledge. They'll just work and they won't stop for. You should realize this was a very intricate building to build. In detail, its architecture and its thing, and then its building. You know, the Jewish people built it very quickly. They ultimately built it very quickly. They started from the 11th of Tishrei. The 11th of Tishrei, they started this building, gathering everything and start to work on it. And they were finished by Kislev. So it's Tishrei, Cheshvan. In a month and like 20 days, less than 20 days, it was done. It was done. The building was done. God then said, we're going to erect it on a Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is another couple of months. But it was done in a month and a half. I have to take away the Shabbos.
So Moses didn't have the faith in the people that God had, so Moses took it upon himself.
Right, to emphasize, Higdil lahem. As we'll soon see why Moshe Rabbeinu had that feeling. Moshe Rabbeinu had a feeling that the Jewish people, because not going to, as I said, I already preempted your question. Not that, as you'll soon see that the Rebbe explains it, that not that the Jewish people would intentionally break the Shabbos, but they would be so enthusiastic that they would not even realize it's Shabbos. They would work 24/7, nonstop, because they want to get this thing done. So really, we have to understand, why would they work 24/7, nonstop, in building this Mishkan? Why were they so enthusiastic? Besides, God commanded them. God commanded them a lot of other things. They didn't. He's talking about men, women, and children. Here we're talking about men, women, everybody came and they collected. It was the only building fund that had enough money. It would never happen again in history. It was the only building campaign that they had to tell the Jews, don't bring any more money. Never happen again. Never happen again. Never. Never. It was the only time when the Jewish people were asked to give money. In a day, they got the entire money and more. That Moshe Rabbeinu had to make an announcement. Stop. Enough. Now that's amazing. That's amazing. Because again, the Jewish people were so enthralled about something. We have to know what was their What was their passion? Something ignited within them in this situation.
But God didn't know that.
God did know that, but that's the beauty of what he answered. God knew it, but the human beings need to reflect one another. I like it's very nice. Human beings, even though God knows something, but human beings need to reflect it. They need to be able to say on their own that that either they're gonna do it or not gonna do it. It's a beautiful concept. God knows everything. It doesn't take away free choice from humanity just because he knows. This was not real estate. This was not real estate. This building was a movable building. It was not real estate. They didn't build a building that this was a mishkan. This was a movable tabernacle. It was not there's no real estate over here. They did not real estate. There was no man's land. It was not real estate. Later on was real estate when they got to the Temple Mount. That was real estate, but not now. Okay, so again, Rashi's interpretation is going back to the rule. Just remember Rashi, because the Rebbe is going to base it. You'll see in the next text. Rashi's interpretation is basic, uncomplicated, and an interpretation is complex. He's not interested in that's not Rashi's approach. Number two is Rashi expects his explanation to be understood directly in his own words. So let's go to the Rebbe, text number 5. As discussed in numerous times, Rashi wrote his commentary in such a way that even a beginner student can understand his intention from his brief words without requiring additional elaboration. In our case, there's a complex back and forth in the commentaries on Rashi. And various letters, because nobody understands really what is that. In many ways, it's complex. What does Rashi want to say? Because Rashi already said it already. And the various resolutions are often now questioned. It's and again, you can go in the Parsha and Rashi, even in Rashi itself, that what did Rashi want to say with this statement? But it doesn't seem logical to assume Rashi indeed had one of the explanations offered in his mind, but didn't indicate to which one he adopts. So therefore, we need to go into what Rashi, into the simple meaning of the verse. Why did Rashi say, Hikdam lahem, that Moshe Rabbeinu had to warn the Jews? Because if not, the warning of God would not have helped. It would not have helped.
You kill them all and you start over.
What? That was not Moshe Rabbeinu's idea. Moshe Rabbeinu knew that the Jews would be so excited in this. Therefore, Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu had to repeat it. Not only did he have to repeat it, he had to bring it forward. He had to bring it forward. Rashi wants to express why Moshe Rabbeinu had to bring it forward. Let's get the background a little bit. And let's go to 6a. And this we'll see, because everything has been explained by Rashi already before. After Yom Kippur, Rashi explained this in Exodus 30. After Yom Kippur, God forgave the Jewish people for sinning in the golden calf. That's what happened, right? God gave the Torah on the 7th of Sivan. On the 17th of Tammuz, they made the golden calf. It's a fast day. It's the 17th day of Tammuz. They made the golden calf. And then for another 80 days, there was a backwards and forwards between God and Moshe Rabbeinu. And the 80th day, which was the 120th day from the story, is Yom Kippur. That's when the story ends, right? Yom Kippur, by night, God says, I forgive the Jewish people. That's when Yom Kippur, as the verse says in the Torah, go in the book, as Salachti, and God says, since this story, I'm going to make Yom Kippur forever on this day. I'm going to make Yom Kippur on the 10th day of Tishrei. Is going to be Yom Kippur forever until today. It's Yom Kippur, and that's why I say you go in the if you listen to the prayers of Yom Kippur, you see it's all based around Vayomer Hashem Salachti, and God says, "I forgive you," which is the day of forgiveness, Yom Kippur, day of forgiveness, right? So, right on Yom Kippur, God forgave the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf, and they were then given the command to build the Mishkan. So Rashi says, next Rashi, on the 10th of Tishrei, God forgave the Jewish people happily and wholeheartedly, so to say, He told him, I forgive them. Hashem salachti. God says, I've forgiven. And he gave him the second set of tablets. Moshe Rabbeinu then descended a mountain, and he gave the commandment to construct the Mishkan. So everything started on the 11th day of Tishrei. 11th day of Tishrei. Right? What is the connection between the story? What is the connection between the story of the golden calf and the forgiveness and the Mishkan?
Something physical for the people to have, is what they wanted with the golden calf.
All right, that would be I don't want to say that's not a good answer, but that is actually sounds like we were giving into the Eibishter gave into the people. That basically you need I'll give you a golden calf, chas v'shalom. You need something physical. No. We can't come to that. The Eibishter, I forgive you for making anything physical. It's not a physical, even though it is a physical thing, but that's not the point.
What is that kapara for them?
Oh, what is the kapara? What is the true? How do you know? How did the Jewish people know that they were forgiven? How did the Jewish people know? God said, I forgive you. How do they know? That's because God said they forgive you. How do we know? How do we know? So what was the Mishkan? What was the Mishkan? So that's why the Mishkan is called Mishkan Ha'edus. The Mishkan is called the Mishkan of testimony. What does it testify? That the Eibush is with us. That was the whole point, the whole concept of this Mishkan. The Torah says, it's not my interpretation. That's what the Torah says. The Torah says, look in the verse, Eila b'kudya Mishkan. These are the numbers of the Mishkan, this next week's portion. Mishkan ha'edus, the Mishkan of testimony, Asher Paka, which Moshe ben accounted, commanded, and was the work of the Levites on the direction of Isamar, the son of Aaron HaKohen. Rashi, again, next week's portion is going to say, Mishkan ha'edus. Why is it called the Mishkan of testimony? The Mishkan was a testimony for the Jewish people that God had forgiven them for the act of the golden calf. This was evident for the fact that God had rested his presence among them. So the Mishkan was, that's the way that Rashi learns, in essence. The whole story, the golden calf, God gave the Jewish people the Torah, which is the greatest revelation in history to the Jewish nation. The Jewish people sinned. God said, I'm out. I'm going to send an angel with you. I'm out. My presence is not going to be with you. You don't deserve my presence to be with you. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, you cannot do that. I'm not going out of here. I'm not leaving. And for 80 days, he works out the situation. God says on the 80th day, after the golden calf, I forgive you. How do we know you're going to be with us? Build a Mishkan.
Sounds like a sea small.
Build a Mishkan, and the Mishkan will be a testimony that I'm with you. And how is the Mishkan a testimony I'm with you? As the Gemara said, Talmud says, 10 miracles that happened in the Mishkan, the fire that went up to heaven, the different things that happened in the Mishkan every single day, that you saw the presence of God with the Jewish nation every single day.
God basically said, now that you did this, I need to prove that I still want to be with you.
No, again, you might be. You're saying it. I understand what you're saying. Rashi doesn't say your interpretation. Rashi says a different interpretation. Rashi says that by you building this Mishkan, I will bring my presence in your midst.
Yeah,
So by you building the Mishkan will prove, first of all, your dedication in building the Mishkan and my presence to be with you. So now you understand what triggered this nation. What triggered the nation to become intensely involved in the building of this Mishkan. Why it became a passionate, unstoppable, 24-hour process of building this Mishkan. because they wanted to know if they were forgiven, if the presence of God would be in their midst. And that's it. And the Jewish people were not stoppable in this mitzvah. And that's why you understand why the Torah gives away so much space for this mitzvah. Because it's a mitzvah, it's one of the very few mitzvahs in the Torah that every single Jew was totally, wholeheartedly, unwavering, totally focused, totally committed in this process.
So it's not the field of dreams where they said, build it and they will come. But
No.
in a way,
This is not to build a temple you should come to. This is a temple to build that the Shekhinah should dwell in their midst. That was the purpose of this
so
temple.
the question is, if we were to decide today to build another Mishkan,
Well, you can't.
but
It's not commanded by God, so you have a drop of a problem. So you have a drop of a problem, it's a drop of an issue, big issue. Because today you only can build a Mishkan on the on the Temple
on the
Mount.
Temple Mount.
That's
So let's go build one.
Amen.
And then God will
No,
come.
but the code of Jewish law says Mashiach has to do that. So we have a drop of an issue, and you know what? The pearl is today. You won't get all Jews to agree with you at this moment. That's the reality. And maybe that's the point. The Mashiach, because imagine if we did, we would be doing something wrong. So therefore, you don't have a consensus. And I agree with you, but you don't have the consensus of the Jewish nation to do that. Number two is you're impure. With all due respect, we're all impure, and you cannot build a Mishkan, a Beis Hamikdash, when you're impure. So you first have to become impure. And that you need.
The impurities are gonna be
Mashiach comes.
resolved by Mashiach.
Correct. So
Right,
there's a
so
lot of
Act
technical
22.
well, but let's start the fundraising. What the heck? Let's start the fundraising. I'll keep the money in the. I'll hold on to the money that we collect. Okay, so let's start collecting. I'll invest the money and I'll take care of it. I'll take a managerial fee, but I'll listen. Manager fee is impossible. You have to get manager fee. Yeah. So when the presence of God came in their midst, they knew that God said when He said He's forgiven that they were forgiven. Understand? So their focus was bringing the presence of God in their midst. That was their focus because they understood they had the presence of God by the Ten Commandments, out of Revelation. Suddenly they were thrown out of they were thrown out. Now they were brought back by this Mishkan. So that's why it's called Mishkan HaEdos. It's a testimony to the Jewish people that God's in their midst. Oh, they surely know God. Moshe Rabbeinu came down. He broke the tablets.
Oh,
What are you talking about? It was. Are you kidding me? They realized they were in the bad. They were thrown out to the couch. They knew that clearly.
You gotta watch the movie.
No, so therefore you got to watch the movie. So therefore you got to get the whole picture to realize what was going on. But once you get the picture, like Rashi gives you the picture, what was going on, you understand the passion and the commitment of the Jewish people to complete this work. Miserably, if you think about it, if you know the Mishkan and how it was built and the technical, it was all done by hand. They didn't have machinery. Everything was done by the hand, with a hammer, and they did this in a very short period. They must have worked on this 24/6. They must have worked on this extremely hard to complete this job. Because again, they simply wanted. They understood what happened. They understood this is the remedy, and no, this is going to be the proof. Not the remedy. The remedy is they did tshuva. The proof that God is going to be in their midst is this Mishkan. That's the proof. So the truth is that the Matan Torah, in a way, the giving of the Torah really was God's gift to the world. The Mishkan was the human's gift to the world. Understand? That's why the Mishkan is important in the Torah. It's the human, it's the Jewish peoples coming together. And I said, men, women, and everybody coming together as one to build this Mishkan.
Only time in history.
And most probably one of the only times in history. So the existence of the divine presence amongst the Jewish people is the testimony that they had been forgiven. No one dwells with someone they hate, only with their loving friends. Everyone rejects their haters. This is why the Mishkan was a testimony that God had forgiven their sins. The Abishah said, I'm going to show you, I'm going to dwell in your midst. I'm going to show you, I'm going to dwell in your midst. So the Rebbe says in text number 9, knowing that God's presence resting in the Mishkan bears witness that the sinning of the golden calf had been atoned for, the Jewish people would be, as they indeed should be, rushing with great speed to complete the finishing of this Mishkan. And this would complete the atonement that they began earlier. It was therefore possible that their rush and speed would cause them to inadvertently transgress and perform some work on Shabbos. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was worried about. God was worried about that the Jewish people would transgress. Moshe Rabbeinu was not worried about the Jewish people going to transgress. Surely they would not transgress. They learned their lesson just 80 days ago. But the Jewish people would be so ecstatic and so focused and so passionate to build this Mishkan that they would inadvertently forget that it's Shabbos. This is why the Jewish people needed to be cautious, though you may be preoccupied in the rush of the work of the Mishkan, nevertheless, the Shabbos should not set aside the account. So Moshe Rabbeinu hiktam lahem. Moshe Rabbeinu had to talk to the people. He understood that what God wanted. To God was more important than Mishkan because he wanted to rest in the midst of the Jewish people. And the second thing, keep the Shabbos. But to him was important the forgiveness of the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid that since the Jewish people would be so passionate, they would forget the Shabbos. That's the simple Rashi. That's the simple Rashi, okay? That's how the Rebbe learns in the two words, Hikna Lahem, as what I said, that every word is precious. The Rebbe feels that Rashi wants to tell the child that why, everybody asks the question, why did Moshe Rabbeinu switch it? Rashi answers him simply. Hikna Lahem, because, the Rashi is to tell him that the Jews are passionate. He already told him that already in the previous portion. Rashi does tell him that Moshe Rabbeinu over here flips it over. Not only says it again, flips it over so that to tell the passionate Jew that he shouldn't, chas v'shalom, come to inadvertently break the Shabbos. That he wouldn't chas v'shalom do it intentionally, but even inadvertently, he'll be so passionate to finish his building. And as I said, we know that they finished it very quickly. And maybe if they didn't keep the Shabbos, they would have finished it in 3 weeks. So they finished it extremely quickly because they wanted to complete this mission and bring the Eibishter and realize that their sin of the golden calf was forgiven.
All the revelations enough for the Jews.
Can I ask you a question?
Well, when somebody's asked a question here, yeah? Yeah, I'm sorry.
So
Somebody's
saying
asking a
that-
question here.
oh,
Danny,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
Somebody's asking a question, yeah.
Why aren't all the revelations that God showed these people that were Jews? Why wasn't that enough? Why didn't?
Yeah, very good question. Very good
Could you
question.
repeat it?
Myself, which I can't, it's impossible, but I try to think that if those revelations were revealed to me, I don't think there's any way that I would deny it. I mean, that goes against anything.
Right, correct.
And here now they're gonna.
Very good question. Very good question.
It's gonna do.
Yeah, very good question. Very good question. And the truth is the Mishkan didn't do it either. It did the revelation. The question is, why is revelation not enough?
Because we are stiff-necked people.
Correct. Of course,
What do you say?
correct.
Yeah.
The greater the revelation, the more the challenge. The more the challenge. That's the way it is. The Eibishter doesn't take away until Mashiach comes and there's no impurity in the world. Then if you're going to have a revelation, it's not going to change you. Because there's always going to be that challenge. And we know that. We know that even with this Mishkan, as you look in the book of what's called Bamidbar, which they call in English Numbers, the challenge of the Jewish nation didn't stop. Did not stop. It continued. Kairach and the messengers and the complainers and it didn't stop. It didn't stop. It didn't stop. Because revelation, every person needs to have their own revelation. That's the way God made humanity. That humans need to have their own revelation. And that's why this is important. The important lesson of the Mishkan is to build your own Mishkan. And that's why we give 4 portions away to it. To go out and build a Mishkan. To go out and build your own tabernacle. God can build it, can reveal this, can build it himself. The importance was that the people should build it. The importance is that a person should have his own revelation. That's really the story over here. People, Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, that's what the Rebbe comes down to a full circle over here, and says that some people get lost in spirituality, right? In revelations, in miracles, and we can chas v'shalom forget the basics. The basics. Right? Because we're into revelation. We're into, wow, there's a revelation. There's a command to build a Mishkan. We're going to have more revelation. We're going to have greater revelations. Oh, all the revelations that we had is not comparison to this new revelation. Moshe Rabbeinu has to tell them, relax. With all the revelations, don't forget the basics. Don't forget the basics. Because that's what happens when a human being, when he has the revelations, suddenly the miracles become more powerful than the basic principles. Basic principles. Don't work on Shabbos. Basic principle. Basic principle. Oh, but we're going to have revelation. Isn't revelation all of that's what we're here for? We're here for the revelation of godliness. What's so important? We'll break a Shabbos. We'll break 2 Shabbos. We'll break 4. What's the big deal? We'll keep it. No. Don't forget the principle. Never forget the principle. It's an important lesson, really, to all of us, because revelations don't change people. Revelations don't change people. Revelations impact people. They impact people. But it doesn't change a person. There's no, what is the expression? There's no atheist in a foxhole. But how most of us don't live in foxholes, and even that person that was in a foxhole ultimately is out of the foxhole. One day, hopefully, he makes it out. Right? We forget those challenges that we had that made us feel a certain way. Because it really wasn't us. It was really the challenge or the revelation or the impact of the situation. You see what happens when a tragedy happens, we all get together. But how long, then it dissipates, right? The next day there's bigger news, there's other news in the news. So you forget yesterday's inspiration. And that's why it's from your harm to right. Revelation doesn't change. And God says, I only showed revelation for one reason. You should fear me. That's it. God says in the Torah, if you think that revelation is going to change you, no. The only reason why I've done revelations in the Torah is that you should realize my power. Not that you're going to change, you're going to become better, or you're going to become worse. It's going to be up to you to do that. You have to have your own revelation.
It's very powerful what you're saying.
It's true. It's a reality. It's true. We were never changed by revelations. We were never changed. Jews were never changed. I'm creative. We were never changed by. The truth is, we were never changed by revelations, and we were never changed by tragedy either. We were never changed by both. We were never changed by great revelations, great miracles, and we were never and we weren't changed by great tragedies. It didn't change anything. Nothing has changed. Jewish people are still here, and it hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. Everything goes on. Why? Because the Jewish people need to change within, not from either without, by God or by another Haman or some other Hitler, is going to change the Jews. No, Hitler changed the Jews, and not Revelation either changed the Jews. What changed the Jews is self. Is the Jewish people change themselves.
Seems like October 7th changed the Jews. A lot of Jews.
A lot of Jews. The question is, how long is it going to last? Mashiach better come fast.
We believe in this.
Can I ask you a question?
Second.
Yet why is it even in ancient times, God never did anything to instill that I am the Lord your God?
He did miracles. God does told you. God did unbelievable miracles from the crossing of the sea to the 10 plagues to the man min hashamayim, the bread from heaven. I mean, the Jews and the debtors had miracles every day, surrounded by unbelievable miracles every single day. There were miracles nonstop. First, it was the Matan Torah. The giving of the Torah was one of the greatest revelations of all time. So there was revelation. But you see, God did a revelation of Matan Torah, giving the Torah, and then 40 days later made a golden calf. That shows you how powerful revelation is. If you don't want to reveal it within you. If you don't want to reveal it within you. The truth is that there are miracles happening constantly. We don't see the miracles. There are miracles happening constantly in the land of Israel. There's miracles happening constantly. And the Gemara says, "Ein adam makeh b'nisai." Most of us don't realize the miracles that are happening every single day.
What was the miracle of World War II?
We survived.
October 7th.
We survived.
I would see a miracle of some devastating disease spread throughout our enemies.
You know what? Our enemies, you look at them, they are dead. They don't have to have anything to them. They're just a sad kind of situation. That alone, what they're in and the way they act is a sad situation. It's just this depressing situation that they don't even realize that they kind of lives they live. But the Eibishter will do what he's got to do. But the Jewish people, I just came back, as I said, came back from Israel, are living. They're living. Halavai, the American Jews would live like the Jewish people are living in Israel with excitement, with happiness and joy. We would all be happier. The Jewish people in Israel are happy. They're dancing, they're happy, they're celebrating. That's what I saw, at least. Yes, what's your question, Jenny? So I want to finish.
So my question is, but it's not on this exactly. It's
No. So let's stick to this. Okay. So let's end it.
It's something you said already. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Let's finish it. So now, the Rebbe, I already said the ending of the class. We'll just read it inside. But I already said the ending of this class, really. Who knows this? It says, Shlomo Melech says, who knows the spirit of a human ascends? On high, and the spirit of the animal that ascends below to the earth. Who knows? I mean, who can comprehend the concept of a spiritual yearning? Well, people always tell me they're on a spiritual yearning. Well, what does that mean? I don't comprehend what that really means. I truly don't. Because what is spiritual? What is the meaning of a spiritual yearning? You have to first characterize what means spiritual. It's a nice word, but what does it mean? What does spiritual mean? Spiritual means something that's not physical. What does spiritual mean? When people say that, a spiritual yearning. Look at the Rebbe, text number 11. The Rebbe writes over here, when Rabbi Shmuel Schneerson was 7 years old, his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, Tzemach Tzedek was the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, once said to him, God dealt us humans a kindness by endowing us with a special quality to be upright, to walk erectly, not like an animal. As such, though we are terrestrial creatures, we see the heavens. Not so with animals who go on all fours, they see only the earth.
Animals look up sometimes.
They look up sometimes. But we, Baruch Hashem, the Eibush should make you a kaima zekufa. We stand straight. When you go to a doctor, he says, stand straight, stop bending over. He tells me, stand straight. Stand straight. You have a different expression. Uplift your eyes. We're learning in Tanya. His head is in his head. He sees what's on top of him. That's why we were yarmulke, because we believe that God's above us, right? Because we have we have the capability to look a little bit higher. What's spiritual? Spiritual means to look a little bit higher. Look at the text number 12. Maybe it'll give you a little bit more. It's a little. Today's youth are bold and defiant. This is a letter of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Not impressed by anything. Not the world, not their parents or family, and not even by what they themselves understand yesterday. Instead, they declare, today we are free to do whatever we want. We can see the consequences of this attitude in recent weeks with protests, strikes, etc. Precisely because of the attitude, it is easier to bring them to the path of observing Torah, because they're so free. That's why the Torah talked to them. The Rebbe wrote this letter in the time of the hippie movement. Right? This is in the 70s, late 60s, 70s. Right? What were Jews busy with? They were busy getting involved with gurus. Right? The Hare Krishnas and all every crazy kind of religion. Yeah. Thousands of Jews were busy in the mountains of Tibet. They're coming to show. They were looking for everything. They were into free love, music. You guys remember the hippie times? You guys are, older than me. Yeah. The Moonies, they went to the Moonies. They were into every crazy thing. And they were into a spiritual journey. They were rebelling against everything. They were rebelling against government. They were rebelling against their parents. It was a freedom. That was the right freedom.
They were looking for what you're saying is going to come in Mashiach.
No. They were actually no. Look what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe spoke to them, and that's why the whole Chabad movement, the Chabad movement, the Chabad houses around the world started with that group. That's when the Chabad houses started, with that group. They're gone already, but it started with that group. It's shame. We're still into that mode, in a way. But they started with that group of hippies that came to Chabad house, and they loved it. Of course, it was. They hated what do they call it? What is the expression? What? No. They hated religion, organized religion. They hated organized. The Chabad was most unorganized of organized religion. So it was just wild. That's it. That they loved Chabad because it was unorganized, officially organized. Okay, because they hated religion because religion was too organized, it was too stiff, it was too regimental, and Chabad was up their alley. It was exactly what they freedoms, come, sing, dance, drink, eat. Let's enjoy life, and they loved it. They loved it. I remember as a kid, I went to a Chabad house in California. The first Chabad house in America was on Gailey Avenue, 741 Gailey Avenue. It's still there. The Chabad on UCLA campus. I was there. My brother-in-law, blessed memory, he was the shliach there with Rabbi Kunin, And Friday night, the place was hundreds of people there. And I was a kid. I was like a 10-year-old kid. I was 10-year-old kid. And it was such an experience. It was an experience I'll never forget. And that inspired me to be a Chabad rabbi, truthfully. That experience, because I saw the freedom of the people, the freedom of the rabbis, and the freedom of expression. It was just an unbelievable experience. And that's what the Rebbe gave. That was the Rebbe's imagination, to take the freedom that people want and direct it in the right way. That's all that they want. He said, yeah, the people want freedom. Let's give them that freedom. Let's give them real freedom. Let's give them really godly freedom. Not freedom that's going to find some other kind of dominion. They're going to become some guru who's going to take over their life.
What's fascinating is that many people move towards something like Buddhism because they didn't really understand the spirituality of Judaic practice. They had no knowledge.
Because again,
because
they felt that Judaism was brought them to organize restriction, too structured restriction, and they were looking for the spiritual part, even though they gave themselves over. Again, they ultimately gave themselves over to they took upon themselves another kind of a dominion. They did it, so they became Buddhists. They became this, became everything else. But besides going to Torah, that would give you your freedom, never will take away your free choice, and would also give you maybe dominion of God, not a dominion of some other entity, not a human being, for sure not.
Maybe they didn't study Tanya.
No, they were not given the opportunity.
And it's different what you learn in Tanya than what you learn in Torah.
No, it's not. Tanya is Torah.
I know, but if you don't see that, it looks like a contradiction.
Correct. So therefore, right. So that's why I agree. So that's why the Lubavitch Rebbe opened up Chabad so to give Jews an opportunity, to give them an opportunity to connect themselves to God, and to better give yourself over to God than some guru on a mountain someplace, or some hippie, or some other organization. Give yourself over not to the organization. Give yourself over to God, and then you'll be in a better situation than giving yourself over. You think you're going to freedom, you're giving yourself over to somebody else anyway. Trust me, in all these things, you're giving yourself over to some guy on the top over there. You're giving yourself over. And over there, you're giving yourself over to a human being. While the Torah, no human being will tell you what to do. So it's your relationship with God, what you want to give over and what you don't want to give over. So it's true freedom. It's true freedom. True democracy. Torah is true democracy. Nobody has the right. Even God says, I'm giving you free choice. I'm not.
People get that, they understand and
Okay, I understand. I get it. I agree with you. Therefore, we need to bring more people to Chabad. The guidance for all those who work with young boys and girls is that they need to approach them and say that even though until now we haven't spoken with you about the yoke of Torah and mitzvahs for whatever reason, then until now, but now we are telling you the truth. There is a Torah and there's mitzvahs, the commandment. The Torah mitzvah must be fulfilled, not just 3 times a year, but every single day of the year. So they are looking, in truth is, all these people that were searching, they were really searching for somebody to tell them what to do. They really were. In all their spiritual journeys, we're really looking for structure. We're not looking for somebody else to tell us the structure. But we're really looking for structure. That's humans. The aim is to create humans that we search for structure. We try to use different words, freedom, but we're not looking for that. We're looking for structure. We go to a doctor because we need structure. If we ate whatever we wanted, if we did whatever we wanted, we wouldn't survive. So therefore, we're looking for stability, for structure, for even somebody else to tell us what the structure should be. Precisely because the youth of great boldness, similar to the Jewish people as a whole, who are described as the boldest amongst nations. It is possible to ask them immediate and complete acceptance. You can tell them, yes, there is structure, it's godly structure. When dealing with the weak or average student, matters of Torah and mitzvahs need to be approached gradually, step by step. But when dealing with students who are obviously to the outside pressure, unimpressed by anything, not even their teacher nor their parents, etc., that trait should be utilized to inform them the yoke of all 613 and ask them to accept it with recognition that the path of truth. See how the Rebbe, this is amazing because this was written in the 70s and late 60s, how the Rebbe felt that this whole movement is looking for something. So everybody thought this movement is looking for nothing. And that's why they condemned it. The Lubavitch Rebbe said, no, you're making a mistake. This movement is looking for something. There's nobody's giving that to them. And therefore they're going everywhere and anywhere to find this structure. Why? Because we don't want to tell them the truth. Bring him in. Give them some food. That's important. Open bar. Open free kiddush. Free Friday night meal. And tell them the truth. Tell them they're Jews.
Some good jokes.
Some good jokes. 100%. Some good dancing. So tell them the truth. Give them the emes. Because that's what really they're looking for.
No, meaningful structure, not just structure.
Yeah,
They had structure,
the path of truth.
but it was meaningless.
Truth. Tell them the truth. Because that's what they are really looking for. They're looking for the truth. And for every reason, we're not giving them the truth. We're giving them watered down situations. We're telling them unclarity, and they don't want that. When this is installed in the youth, not only will they themselves become observers of Torah mitzvahs, and that they have proved this to be right, but beyond that, because they are not influenced by anyone who looks down on them, they don't care. They don't care what other people say. So what do they care? They'll become religious, even though people say, "What are you crazy?" It's like, "Good, have a good day. It's my free choice." That's what happened. And they will influence others as well. This will extend until they transform the entire world to follow the principles of justice, fairness, and righteousness. And that's what the Rebbe saw in that situation. That the Americans are ready for the truth. We don't want to tell them the truth. Let's end this off. The last statement of the Rebbe. Our Torah portion relates how Moshe relayed God's command to the Jewish people. God had already told Moshe that the Jewish people need to be cautioned not only about the actual law of a construction and mission doesn't override the Shabbos, but they also needed to be careful to avoid unintentionally breaking the Shabbat. That's the point. In their passion, just because everybody wants to, they have a desire, we're searching, therefore we can forget about. No. You have to tell that Jew. In his passion, he wants freedom, he wants everything, he wants the love of the world, I want everything, I want that. You really want structure. That's really what you want. Not even for yourself, you want structure in the world. You want truth. And the Torah gives you that. And the proof the Torah gives you that, because the Torah does not force you to do anything. It tells you the good and the bad and the ugly, but you do whatever you want. And even those expressions about death, trust me, nobody was put to death because of that. Unless it's recorded. Okay, so relax. Relax. It's fine. No, it's truth. It's truth. It does truth. It's just truth. It's not a sketa. It's just truth. It's just truth. In essence, the Torah says, I'm telling you what the truth is. Torah says, working on Shabbos, the opposite of life.
Was
It's
it,
the opposite of true life. That's it. It's the opposite of true life.
wasn't the one who was chopping wood on Shabbos?
There was that the recorded one. That's what I meant. Besides that, the one was recorded. Okay. But you had to have witnesses. It was very difficult to put anybody to death.
Warning, right? They had to be warned.
You had to be warned. You had to be witnesses. It's too difficult to put a person to death in any of the deaths of the Torah. It's extremely difficult. The Gemara says if you put a person to death, if a court put a person to death once in 7 years or once in 70 years, it was called a murderous court. So nobody was put to death. The point was the truth. The Torah is telling you the truth. That's it. You maybe don't like the truth, but the Torah is telling you the truth. The Torah is telling you you should not work on Shabbos. The working on Shabbos is the opposite of life, and that's it. You don't like that word? Okay.
Give you a different piece. It's physical death and the spiritual.
Okay, fine. If you want to go say that, but whatever. So whatever. I'm not gonna. It's not important. It's the truth. It's the truth. You cannot argue. The Torah is not a politically correct book. It's the truth. It's a book of the truth. It might not be politically correct. Everything that the Torah says might not be, especially in our times, not be the most politically correct book. But it's not a book of politics. It's a book of truth. It's a book of emes. It's emes, and the truth is the truth. The truth does not change by generation. It doesn't change.
We've had parents who said he's dead to me.
Again, the problem in today's society, is we're afraid to say the truth. That's the problem in society. We are afraid to say the truth. And how far have we gone in the world today that we're afraid to say the truth? What is true and what's not true? Right? You cannot say anymore, man is a man and woman is a woman. It's not the truth. That has become not the truth anymore. Right? It's crazy. It's just crazy. The Torah is the truth. And that's it. And and every person looks for the truth. Oh, relax. Doesn't go further than that. It says the truth. But also need to be.
Let me shut up.
No, I'm here to rub you up. But also needed to be careful to avoid unintentional breaking the Shabbos, though you may be preoccupied in rushing of the work of the Mishkan. In order to address this need and assure that the people always be cognizant of the Shabbos, takes precedence over the construction of Mishkan. The Moshe relayed the commandment of Shabbos first before giving the instruction of building the Mishkan. This would guarantee that even as they rush and hurry to build the Mishkan, they would not transgress the God's command. So the Rebbe ends off, text number 14. We live in a time when the youth are not waiting. They're crying out. Some do audibly, others with deep feeling. Some articulate it clearly. Others with silent language of anguish, like a person suffering from an illness so deep that they themselves do not know what it manifests. What is our obligation? We must approach them with the Torah of truth and with the Torah of life and with the commandment of the Torah about that, what it says, and you shall live by them. That's what we need to do. We need to tell them, we need to tell ourselves the truth. Might not be able to handle it. We need to tell our neshamas the truth. We need to tell the world the truth. The truth is what's going to outlast everything. The truth. Today we live in a time that we need to say the truth. In Israel, we need to say the truth. The truth is truth. And that's it. And it might not be politically correct. Might not be what you don't want to hear. That's the truth. Chaim l'chaim, everybody. Have a wonderful and beautiful day. And we all learned a simple Rashi. That's all we did.